The MLB trade deadline has concluded, and did the Mariners improve? Yeah. Could the Mariners have done better? Absolutely. Now I am here to explain after this word from our sponsor, SEATGEEK. SEATGEEK is a mobile ticketing app for sporting events, concerts, and other events. They make the buying experience easier by the app ranking each ticket from 0 to 10 to see if you are getting a good deal, and you can see exactly where you are sitting. I regularly use that app, and I have had nothing but a fantastic experience with SeatGeek. Use my promo code RooftopSports to get $20 off of your first purchase. Link to the code, app, and website will be in the description, so take advantage, and thank you. With the Phillies arriving to Seattle this weekend, use that promo code RooftopSports to get your $20 off to save $20 for those games. Now let's get into the trades. Trade deadline, shall I say. So the Mariners actually made 4 key trades in this deadline. And before I explain it once again, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification. And let's get to the first one immediately. So the first one that happened, and I was pleasantly surprised about this one, it was when the Mariners traded for Randy Arozarena, and I did not expect this to happen, and I didn't expect the return given to the Rays to be what I expected. What I was going to expect either. So the Mariners got Randy Arozarena. They got him from the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Brody Hopkins and Aiden Smith. And the beauty of that is none of them were even in the top 10 for prospects in the rankings. So Mariners got some really good value out of that, just like how this season they got Luke Raley off of Jose Caballero, which I still think that is still a good value trade that the Mariners have made. So the Mariners did it once again by getting Randy Arozarena. And if Brody Hopkins and Aiden Smith somehow turn into something like all-stars, fine, whatever. But if it means for the Mariners to even just get to the playoffs or let alone win the World Series, I'm pretty sure we can live without those 2 prospects. And Randy Arozarena has been doing pretty well. And before I get into that, he could be a free agent by as late as 2027, so he does have some years of club control. So another good value trade that Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander got out of that. And so far, Randy Arozarena has played pretty decent well. He's been, at least before this game, or actually I can go to the most recent stats of how Randy Arozarena has been doing since joining the Mariners, and he has been playing very well. As I check with the stats and see where he is at. Now, before he hit 1 for 5, he was batting .455 with a home run, so 2 extra bases, with a .538 OBP, .818 slugging, and a 1.357 OPS. Obviously, we expect those numbers to go down, but either way, he has contributed immediately for the Mariners. And also, the Mariners have only lost 1 game since the deadline, and their offense has been playing a lot better because when you have Randy Arozarena, you're going to be taking pressure off of the likes of Cal Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez when he is back, J.P. Crawford when he is back, also like Luke Raley, Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, and Mitch Haniger. There will be much less of a pressure for them to perform at a much better performance that we would hope. So I do think the Mariners did well on that trade. I think that's a trade. I think that is by far their best trade of that trade deadline out of the 4. Now we still have 3 others to explain. Now the next one is going to be Yimi Garcia. I first thought it was Yimi Garcia, but it was Yimi Garcia. So the Mariners sent Jacob Sharp and Jonathan Clase. Now, the kicker of this one, Jonathan Clase was actually a top 10 prospect for the Seattle Mariners. But how he did this season, he was batting .195 with a .233 OBP. I mean, he didn't really play much. He played very limited. But I guess when he was playing for the Mariners did at least went 12-7 when he was playing very well, at least until July. At least until July, they were 11-4 when he was playing. So whatever he was playing, I'm not saying that he was the reason why the Mariners were playing so well under Jonathan Clase, but he was providing the value such as the hustle that we got out of him, pretty decent fielding and speed, and now hopefully for him, he can get more opportunities in Toronto because I just wasn't sure if there was going to be enough of a role for him right now at this present time, especially when for some odd reason, Mariners just have a difficult time getting their prospects from like AAA or AA level and smoothly transition to major leagues, because we've seen problems like that happen with like Evan White had a difficult time in the Major League Baseball. Same with Kyle Lewis, even though he won Rookie of the Year in 2020 pandemic year. And also Jared Kelenic, who struggled pretty much his entire time with the Mariners, with the exception of like maybe a couple good months in the 2023 season. Now, Yimi Garcia, he is one of the top relief pitchers right now in baseball. And when he was with Toronto, he had a 2.70 ERA, and his strikeouts was 42 to 8 walks. So this was also, some would say that it was an overpay, but at this point, I really want to see a World Series. And if they had to give up Jonathan Clase for it, so be it. And if he does well, fine, so be it. That's the part of risking of making these trades, is to trade any of your top 10 prospects if it means to get someone from the bullpen, because the bullpen has been absolutely struggling, especially with Ryan Stanek, who, by the way, the Mariners traded away for around a top 30 prospect, according to the Mets system. And I was hoping that the Mariners would use Ryland Thomas, who was the guy to be I was hoping he would be a trade piece for the next guys, but I guess that just didn't happen. But Yimi Garcia has been also pitching very well for the Mariners. He didn't even give up any runs, especially when he was pitching. So he's been pretty much perfect, with the exception of giving up like one hit, which he finally did against Boston. So I do commend the Mariners for at least willing to take the risk to give up that top 10 prospect if it means to get Yimi Garcia, because Mariners desperately need help in the bullpen, because Matt Brash is still out, obviously, because of that Tommy John. Then you've got Gregory Santos, who's still coming back in the groove, and you got Andres Munoz, who at this point he's going to be the closer, and you don't want to overuse him too much in the high leverage situation because he has been injured before. So hopefully with Yimi Garcia, that means that will be depth added. Looks like he's going to be used as a high leverage guy, which I do really like. That means that pressure will be taken off of like Taylor Saucedo, Austin Voth, and like Colin Snyder, who has also been pitching pretty decent. So I did like that trade. Yes, they gave up Jonathan Clase, but it was completely worth it, in my opinion, because we want a World Series. We don't want to just keep hoarding the prospects too much. We want World Series championships. And I want more than just going to the playoffs as well. Next trade was a pretty cheap trade. So the Mariners acquired two-time All-Star Justin Turner and cash considerations from the Blue Jays in exchange for RJ Schreck. RJ Schreck was the guy who the Mariners got out of that trade. And I also like this trade. Yes, of course, my initial reaction was like, wow, cheap trade, huh? I hope that's not the Mariners' final trade for a bat. But Schreck has actually been playing pretty well for Everett as of late. 12 home runs, 44 RBIs, 57 walks to 47 strikeouts. So the Blue Jays did get some kind of value. He's 24 years old, so maybe he'll be MLB ready real soon. Actually, no. Actually, he did get promoted to Arkansas, so maybe by next year he'll be their prospect of the future, but not my problem because Mariners are trying to win a World Series, and Justin Turner's been playing very well as of June. His numbers so far when he was with the Toronto Blue Jays, who here is what it was. Let's take a look. Justin Turner, in 90 games, had 6 home runs, 31 RBIs. I mean, they're not numbers that are really screaming, especially with a 373 slugging percentage, but the guy does do a good job limiting his strikeouts, and that means he does get on base, 39 walks, so he does have a pretty high walk ratio. So I think that's going to be very helpful where he can platoon with Luke Raley, since it looks like the Mariners are just refusing to let Luke Raley hit against lefties because he is just that bad. But if you're going to platoon, then at least have Justin Turner be a solid right-handed batter so you can use him as a first baseman. Then you can focus on putting in like Mitch Haniger as your DH or Mitch Garver as a DH if you still wish. although I do think he's going to be a backup catcher, and I think he's going to have a much more limited role this time, which I'm okay with because I'd rather have Mitch Garver as your backup catcher than than Sebi Savala, who he was very difficult to watch because the guy was like an automatic strikeout machine. And Justin Turner's been playing pretty well. He actually did very well in his debut. He drove in a couple runs. Let's double check and see if he actually did drive in those runs. He drove in 2 RBIs. Yes, he was 1 for 5. Hey, he only struck out once, so that means he does put the bat on the ball. So that means he does make good contact. He can be a great asset in the clubhouse, provide leadership, and he has that World Series experience. And it looks like he is hungry for possibly one last one, especially when he's 39 years old, which is why I was a little bit shaky about the trade. But hey, Mariners got a good guy in leadership and can hit for contact and get on base. So I did like that trade. Pretty good trade. I mean, I'm saying that all these trades all had a purpose, a very good purpose. And then JT Chargois, can I even say his name correctly? I can't. Right now, he has a 1-0 record with a 1.62 ERA. In about 15 games pitched, only 16 innings pitched total. But I think that was also a necessary trade to add more to the value, more to the depth, since the Mariners did trade away Ryan Stanek. And how much was given? Mariners gave up Will Schomburg away, and it's not like he really had much of a role or a future anyway for the Mariners. Now, I may eat my words. If he does break out into an all-star, by all means, you can rip me on this channel or whatever, however you like. And the most ironic thing was he was actually used in a trade package to get Diego Castillo from the 2021 trade deadline, which I thought that trade deadline was an absolute disaster since the Mariners traded away Kendall Graveman, which really caused Kyle Seager to snap and the clubhouse to really just get all tense. And then they kind of compensated to get Diego Castillo, but now Diego Castillo, he never, in my opinion, really worked out for the Mariners, and I was not disappointed when the Mariners got rid of him. And Diego Castillo, where is he at? Right now, he is playing for the Minnesota Twins. He's actually having a good season, but he hasn't really played much at all. Looks like he spent most of his time in the minor leagues, so pretty ironic how the Mariners got JT back. So the trade overall, I was happy with the Mariners got, but however, and I have to say this, I really hate to say this, I really do think the Mariners could have gotten a little bit more than that. Like the bullpen, I'm okay with it. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe should have gotten Tanner Scott or anyone else. But I guess Jerry didn't want to give up more top 10 prospects for a bullpen pitcher. But I really do think the Mariners could have gotten at least Yandy Diaz, and better yet, best case scenario, I really think they should have made a more serious push at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, granted, it looks like the Blue Jays just weren't interested in trading him, but with the pieces that the Mariners have and that amazing farm system that they have right now, I think they should have just pulled the trigger. You would have enjoyed at least a season and a half with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Would have been a huge impact on this bat. If it was to cost Cole Young, Lazaro Montez, and many more, fine. I'll dang the consequences because it is time to compete for a World Series championship. And look what happened. Like in 2022, when the Mariners traded they traded for Luis Castillo, and I can remember how much the Mariners gave up for that. They gave up Noelvi Marte, who was one of their top prospects. He is now serving a huge suspension. He served an 80-game suspension because of PEDs. Right now, Edwin Arroyo, he started an A+. He's been okay. He's not been too great. I mean, an A+, he batted .248 with a .321 OBP, but the man strikes out a ton. So looks like he's going to be in the minor leagues for a while. And he hasn't even cracked 20 years old yet. Actually, he barely cracked 20 years old in the past year, so now he's going to be 21. And he's on a 60-day IL, as it seems, so he's also injured. So Mariners were willing to take that risk, and they did it for Luis Castillo, and I was hoping that the Mariners maybe did the same thing for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and better yet, I really think the Mariners should have gotten Yandy Diaz. And before I get into Yandy Diaz, like, sure, the Blue Jays just didn't want to trade him because they just wanted to sell tickets for the remainder of the season and then reload. But if the Mariners could have given him an offer that they could not refuse, and maybe, like, sell the idea that, like, for example, Cole Young could be a great shortstop or a third baseman or wherever you want to put him, or second base. Sell the idea that Lázaro Montes could be your next Yordan Alvarez. Like, sell on the idea. Like, Jerry DiPoto, you are a salesman. Sell the idea to give the fans hope for the future, because it looks like in Toronto just hasn't worked out. So I really just think that the Mariners could have made that one last little push for Vlad Guerrero Jr., because it really would have been nice to have him. It would have been solid to have him on the first base. I mean, yeah, you would have had like Justin Turner, but I think if maybe Vlad Guerrero Jr. happened, then Justin Turner doesn't happen. But either way, you would have found a way to make room for him, and you would just move things around. But I think Yandy Diaz really should have happened, because it looks like during that trade deadline today, when I was covering it for like 5.5 hours, the Yankees were in the mix for him, the Mariners were in the mix, and the Astros were in the mix. But ultimately, the Astros and the Yankees didn't really have the draft capital or the prospect capital to get him. But the Mariners did, and what was very disappointing was that the Mariners just didn't pull that trigger. I don't know what would have cost, and there was a rumor possibly that the Rays just wanted some more prospect starting pitching, and looks like the Mariners just didn't have that, with the exception of Emerson Hancock. And no, they're not going to trade Brian Wu and Bryce Miller, because they believe they are still going to be part of the rotation long term, at least for the meantime. But I think they really should have done it. They really should have sold it to him. But I guess the Rays were just burned out from giving away Arozarena. But they were on a fire sale anyway. So I really think the Mariners really could have done it. And I think they should have done it, because Yandy Diaz would have given this team much more confidence. It could have made them the favorite to not only make it to the playoffs, win the division, but possibly even compete for the World Series. So there is as much as this trade deadline was, they did good things in it. But however, I think it did fall a little bit short, and I will have to say that I am a little bit disappointed that it ended with just those 4 players, and you really should have gotten either Yandy Diaz, or you should have gotten not only Yandy Diaz, but maybe you could have gotten Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to make sure that the Mariners were going to compete for the World Series, because I mean, with this offense right now, like, I can see it possibly winning the division, because Astros are having their problems too. It looks like Kyle Tucker's on a 60-day IL, which basically means he's out for the season. So that gives the Mariners the upper hand. But yeah, Kyle Tucker, I hope you're okay. I hope you're not hurt long term. I just want to make sure so I don't sound like a butt. But let me double check on Kyle Tucker and see where he's at, because it looks like Houston said they were going to put him on a 60-day IL. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Yep, 60-day IL. Astros put Kyle Tucker on a 60-day IL. So unfortunately, their all-star is hurt and out for the season, which not good for them. So the Mariners better take advantage of the vacancy that the Astros have and compete for the rest of the season. And the other reason I'm disappointed too is maybe the Mariners should have made that run for Jazz Chisholm, but I guess they felt that Jorge Polanco and the healthy J.P. Crawford could have done it. But with J.P. Crawford struggling, I really do think that Mariners could have gotten Jazz Chisholm, knowing that the Yankees got him. So now that the Yankees have him, that makes the Yankees a much bigger threat for a World Series. So maybe they could get in the way of the Mariners, and that's if the Mariners even make it to the playoffs anyway. So, but those are my thoughts. That's how I felt about this entire trade deadline. If I were to give them a final grade, I'm going to give them a B. It would have been an A- or an A if they got Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz, I would say A-, but if you got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I would have for sure called that an A to an A+. Very successful deadline. Would have been probably the best deadline in Mariners history, aside from 1995 and 96, which I do think those were the two best trade deadlines in the Mariners history. And I do have a link for that video, so for the 95 Mariners where they made the trade for Vince Coleman and Andy Bennett. So go ahead and check that out. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification, and go Mariners.